So we're on Wildling at Le Grand Mot, and just got here yesterday, and just to take a look at what's going on with the boat, make sure everything's cool, and if they've done all the projects that we needed to get done before we start the sailing season. So everything's looking pretty good, and we also had our HF radio installed, so I was going over the setup of that. So I thought I'd make a little video and just to maybe show you a little bit of the Nav Station on Wildling, because I've been kind of configuring a few things, and maybe be interesting to sort of take a look at how we've got it set up. So basically, Nav Station, so we're in the salon of the boat, and pretty much this corner here is all taken over with the Nav Station. You see the electrical panel where I can control all of the different pumps and lights and systems, instruments and so on. Pretty much all the DC systems controlled there. Water tanks, diesel fuel levels, navigation lights, mooring lights. Also has the power indication for the inverter for 230 volt AC system as well, where I can kind of regulate that. So the Nav Station, typically when we're standing watch, a lot of time at night we'll spend a lot of time in here. If the weather's nasty, we'll be in here because you're completely sheltered. In fact, the weather's very nasty today. I was going to show you some of the outside instruments, but it's windy and raining and cold, so I probably won't do that. So anyway, let's go over to the Nav Station here. So if we wobble around a little bit, and I'll just sit down and show you a few of the things we've got here on the Nav Station. Okay, so basically all the gauges are here. Also, the camera right now is at my eye level, so you can see kind of the visibility that I have just sitting here at the Nav Station, so it's pretty nice. So you can sort of sit here and see everything around. Sorry, the salon's a bit of a mess with cushions and stuff, but you know, even out behind and so on. So there's really good visibility from here. And then so let's see, starting with the top here. So we've got our little map light. So basically this guy has, sorry, just put it on the camera here. So it's got two different colors for daytime and for nighttime and off. So nighttime it's got the red, and you use the red light because when it's on at night and everything's dark and your eyes are accustomed to the dark, the red doesn't ruin your night vision. So you can kind of watch here, look at your charts, or do anything if you're writing in your log or whatever it might be. You can use the red light, and then when you go back outside and it's dark, you can still see really well. So then you've got the day light, which kind of lights stuff up. So that's what that is. So next down we've got our audio system. So it's a fusion system, and it's I'll just turn it on. It's basically, right now it's connected to my iPhone, so I'll just turn it on. You can kind of hear that. So basically the way this system is set up, we've got speakers in the cockpit, sorry, in the salon and in the cockpit. So salon speakers are just behind on either side, and in the cockpit, I don't know if you can see, but in the top of the bimini out the back, we've got speakers there as well. Also, you can connect the television to this system as well. So let's go over here and show you that. So over here, this is the slides out here. It's the TV screen. So when you have a, I can play a movie from the computer or a video server, and then it connects through into the TV for audio and video from the Nav Station, which is kind of convenient. Let's close that up. Okay. We'll go back over. Alright. And the other thing too with the, let's turn the sound down. See the volume, you can set the volume levels independently for the salon or the cockpit. You can turn it off one or the other or whatever. You've also got different channels you can, for different functions for radio, FM radio, and various things like that. So that's that. Let me just pause that so we don't have to listen. Okay, so underneath there is the instruments, one of the instrument screens. We've got these. We've got all over the boat actually. We've got one at each helm station outside, one here, and also one in the master cabin, so I can see, or whoever's off watch that's having a sleep or a rest can keep an eye on what's happening with the boat. And these are just really nice instruments. They're really easy to read. They've got a day mode and a night mode. They're in day mode in terms of the lighting. So I've got a few different things showing here. This is the screen I use the most inside, because I can see at a glance kind of most of the things that are going on with the boat. So I can see my boat speed. Speed over ground is going to be my GPS speed, 1.9 meters of depth, the apparent wind speed and apparent wind angle, and the true wind speed and true wind angle. So as you can see, it's blowing pretty steady 18 to 20 knots today, which isn't very pleasant, and it's cold, so not too nice. But there's also a bunch of different screens, and you can set up kind of your own however you want. There's a depth monitor with a sort of depth history as well. It's on there. What else we got? So another larger display. You can pretty much set up these however you want. This is good when you're using the GPS or the autopilot to navigate you to a destination waypoint. You can kind of track your progress. And then so this one shows pretty much how the boat's progressing, and also if there's any tidal drift one way or the other, which is cool. This is the autopilot monitor, so it tells you kind of what your compass setting is, what your set heading is, so what have you got your autopilot set to. The little bar down the bottom that says 25 is actually the rudder angle. Shows you how many degrees of rudder angle there is. Boat speed, and then the S is that it's in standby. It's not in autopilot right now, so you can kind of keep an eye on things. You can't control anything from this display, from this instrument. It's really just for monitoring stuff. You control things from the other instruments, and I'll show you that in a second. So yeah, another one which is another kind of cool display which shows you kind of the visual of your wind stuff. So I'll leave it there because that one's good, or this one, either one. I like to be able to see the depth and the speed. Sometimes if I'm kind of far away and I want to see the big numbers, I'll just put the depth and speed so I know what's going on. Okay, so next up is the chart plotter. So this is the chart. We've got a chart plotter at the nav station here. We've got a chart plotter also outside near the port helm, and it swivels so you can kind of point it to either, so you can see it from either of the helm stations. So chart plotter does a bunch of stuff. On this one right now, obviously it's got a view of the actual chart of the area we are. We can zoom in and out of that. Clear that. You can see the little squiggles here are the tracks from where the boat's been sailed over the past, and so a lot of little sorties out in the bay here. It's kind of a handy thing to have the track turned on while you're sailing, because if you lose something or someone overboard, and you can't get to your man overboard, or you forget to mark the man overboard, you can retrace your steps and hopefully find them. But it's kind of a useful feature. And so lots of information about the chart. You can kind of move it around just like you would an iPhone, or you can kind of zoom in and out so we can see where we are. So it's pretty much here we are in the Mediterranean, and as you zoom out you get a little bit less detail, and so here we are with sort of kind of Central Europe around, and Spain over here, and Mediterranean. So it's pretty cool. You just zoom in. There's another few little features. See these little triangles here? Let's go and choose some over there. Let's see if I can find one that's good. So this is the AIS system. So basically what this is doing is it's giving me information about various obstacles. Either it's a boat, or it could be, in this case, it's a navigation aid, a flashing light. So they're using, so it's giving out an AIS signal. So I'll go into clear that. I'll zoom into where we are in the port. because usually there's a bunch of boats with AIS turned on. So you can just sort of touch on any of the AIS arrows. You find one and then click and touch on it again, and it gives you information about the boat. So, so this one's telling me this is the name of the boat, and its length is 10 meters, it's 4 meters beam, so it's probably a monohull sailboat, and or it could be a power boat, hard to say. How far away it is, what it's bearing, closest point of approach, and if it's going, when it's going to actually come, and also it'll give you an alarm if the boat is on a collision course. So it's a pretty handy feature, particularly at night when you can't see as well outside, so you can see what's going on. So that's kind of the chart plotter, kind of some good stuff there. And then there's a bunch of other functions on the main chart plotter here. You've got radar and various different things. I'll show you a couple of these. So let's look at instruments. So this is another configurable screen. It's a little bit like this one over here, except bigger and more graphical, and you can kind of display more stuff. And it's the same kind of thing. You can go over to your menu, and you've got different instrument dashboards that you can look at. So let's see one that's kind of got some interesting information on it. Yeah, so this one's got a bunch. Boat speed, 11 degrees, sea temperature, and stuff like that. So that's the instruments. Let me go over back to here. The autopilot. So we've got autopilot controls at each of the helm stations outside, but you can also control the autopilot from inside. So if it's nasty weather, or you just want to kind of hang out inside, you can...
Sécurité.
That's the
Ici le Crossmed.
VHF radio.
Crossmed, qui va diffuser sur le canal 79, depuis son émetteur d'Agde, un bulletin météorologique spécial. Le Crossmed passe canal 79, 7, 9.
Okay, so she just said that there's going to be a special information bulletin on channel 79. So let me go over to channel 79 and we'll listen to what she has to say. 7, 8, 9, there we go. So it might take her a second. There we go.
Sécurité. Ici le Crossmed. Il fait un bulletin météorologique spécial code numéro 76.
Alright, so it's a special weather bulletin.
2016 à 4h10 universel. Annulé en place le BMS numéro 65. Origine Météo France.
No, it's just saying it's a weather bulletin from Météo France, telling us the region. Anyway, you get the idea. So basically, the VHF radio is pretty vital piece of equipment. So it's used for short range communications, radio communications. So it's pretty much line of sight. So imagine it's pretty much anything from real close to sort of 20 miles sort of thing. And really good for if you see a vessel and you need to talk to it that's close by, you're entering a port and you need information on where to dock or where the fuel is or anything like that. If you have an emergency, you can contact folks, and it's good for, as we just saw, receiving weather broadcasts. So pretty useful. This one has, you can see on the display here, our position, latitude, longitude, our course, which is flashing because it's actually we're not moving, and the local time currently. So tells me a bunch of stuff, and it also allows me to send out a message if there's an emergency or something like that using a special distress button here. You just lift this little thing up and press it, and it sends out a special coded emergency signal. Alright, so let's finish back up with the chart plotter. So we looked at the autopilot, so I can control the autopilot from inside, which is pretty cool. And we'll go back, let's see what else we got that's kind of interesting, that we use a lot. We use the chart a lot, the instruments a bit. I mainly have these. This is why I have this instrument here, so I can be on the chart and still see the instruments really clearly. That's why I don't have just everything on the chart. Also, if I lost my chart plotter, this is a different system, so I wouldn't necessarily lose my instruments, so I'd still be able to see what was going on, just because things break on boats. So it's good to have some redundancy in the places you are. Okay, so let's go to the radar. We use the radar a lot. So right now we're seeing the radars in standby, so let me go to menu and I'll transmit. It goes in standby when you're not using it to save power. And right now it's painting a picture of what you can see outside, which is a bunch of boats all around us. So we're seeing the paint of all the boats. You can also see the little vessels on the AIS. You can also see the AIS information here. And I can set up these guard zones where I can basically put in areas where I want to set an alarm. So if a vessel enters one of those areas, it'll send me it'll sound an alarm, so I can react to that. And good. So that's good when you're not able to be watching the radar all the time, particularly at night. We use this a lot at night because obviously you can't see what's coming. And it will help you. Okay, I'm just going to turn her down for a second. She's very interested in telling us all about what's going on. So it's just super useful at night, and I wouldn't sail without radar. It's really good. You've also got a little summary of the AIS vessels that are the closest, and if they're dangerous, these are all dangerous. Or this one's safe, it says, but these others are dangerous because obviously they're too close. But that's kind of what that is. So radar is pretty useful. The other thing that's kind of nice is these other displays. You can set up a bunch of different displays that are sort of custom. So I can have, for example, the chart and the radar on the one panel. I can just select that and kind of zoom in on the chart, and then still have my radar so I can see what's going on. So that's pretty useful. Again, when we're sailing at night and we want to see what's around. The other thing that's kind of useful about the radar is for tracking storms and squalls. So when it's when you're sailing it, even in the day, but mostly at night again, you can't see the weather around you, and you need to know if you're going to run into a squall because they usually carry very high winds. So you might need to reef or put the sails down or change your course to run from it a bit until it passes. So this is really useful for giving you a real good indication of where the squalls are, what the weather's doing. So we use that pretty often as well. Okay, so that's the chart plotter. Let's see. We looked at the VHF radio. Next to the VHF radio is the satellite phone. So we don't. It's got a little portable phone. I don't have it on the boat right now. It just goes into this little dock and connects into power and also to an external satellite antenna. And the antenna is about 2/3 of the way up the mast on the spreaders. So we get a pretty good satellite signal. When I have the nice thing about this is I can put the handheld sat phone in here, but also I can take it with me if I need to and use it as a handheld portable sat phone. But when it's in its holster, then I use this little handset to talk on it. So it's pretty nice. So it gives you that option as well. All right, so down here is the power monitoring. So this is for all of our lithium batteries and charging systems. So it tells me what's happening, how much charge I have. Right now we're 89% because I've been on the boat all day running a bunch of systems and it's not sunny, so the solar panels are not doing a whole bunch. So they're probably putting in some because I'm only drawing 4 amps right now. But usually the solar panels keep the boat completely charged. And we've got a lot of, I've used like 11%. I've been on the boat all day working, so it's pretty good. And so it gives you some information about what's going on, and there are various sort of screens that you can scroll through to get more information about the batteries and the alternators and solar and stuff like that. Okay, so over here we have the new HF radio that we just installed. This is important because when you're doing long distance ocean sailing, the VHF radio that we just looked at over here is only good for short distance. The HF radio is excellent for when you're doing long distance, and because it can really go hundreds or even thousands of miles. So typically what you do is when you're sailing a crossing, a long ocean or sea crossing or a multi-day passage, Oftentimes you'll be doing that with other boats, and usually what we'll do is we'll set up a radio schedule. So either every morning or every afternoon or both, all the boats will check in on a certain frequency. Just someone will kind of keep a track of everyone's position. We'll just chat about what's going on. And when you're doing long passages, it's really kind of nice to have other folks around you can kind of chat with and check in on. So pretty useful piece of equipment. This one's pretty nice. I'll just turn it on. It's kind of noisy, so let me... Alright, so let me just do that. Alright, so so typically, you know, when you're doing a passage, the boats will be separated by hundreds of miles after a few days, so you can't use the VHF very much at all. It's just line of sight, but the HF will go very long distance, so it's really cool for that. Let's see, show you. There's not much activity on the marine channels, so you know, there's not much going on. So if I can find something, I probably won't. It's pretty quiet. Anyway, so what I'll do is, the nice thing about this one is it allows me to access all the amateur radio frequencies as well. So if I go to, say, the 20-meter amateur band, there's usually a bunch of activity there. So I'll just dial in for one, let's say 50. So this, on this band right now, these guys are probably all over Europe. Yeah, so anyway, you can usually... Alright, so we're getting one guy and we can't hear who he's talking to because he's too far away. But so anyway, there's a fair bit of activity. It's Saturday in Europe, so probably a bunch of folks on the 20-meter band. Anyway, so yeah, so anyway, it's also a little bit hard in the marina to get a good signal, to get a lot of signal out as well, but because of all the other boats around and stuff. But anyway, so that's the radio there. Let's see what else to tell you. Yeah, there's a few things worth looking at. I'll just lift up the panel here. Let's see, just to show you a few things underneath that you can't see from the outside that we also kind of have installed. So this little fella here is the Wi-Fi. So we've got a Wi-Fi booster. It's actually inside the mast, at the top of the mast, and what it does is it picks up land-based Wi-Fi hotspots, and it allows anyone on the boat to share the signal. So you can get you can get up to a mile or more range, where you could never do that with your computer because the Wi-Fi radio inside your computer isn't strong enough. So the little booster lets us connect to shore-based Wi-Fi from when we're at anchor or nowhere near the actual location. So it gives us a really strong signal, and then everyone connects to the Wildling Wi-Fi hotspot, which is this, and we can share the signal from the shore, which is cool. So let's see, what else have we got here. This little thing here, this Master Vault panel, is cool. It's a data interface to the Master Vault electrical system. So Master Vault, all of the system here is Master Vault on this boat, with the lithium batteries, the alternator charging, all of the switching and switch buses and so on. Master Vault, and the monitoring system is Master Vault. And this little connector, USB connector, I can connect into a laptop with some software that the Outremer guys gave me, and I can send them information. So they can basically take control of my computer and take a look at what's going on and get information about the system. What else here worth looking at? This little guy is I don't know if you can read that, it says Go Free. Go Free is a little Wi-Fi interface to the B&G instrument system. So there's a iPad app that you can use and connect to this wirelessly, and you can sort of see everything that I showed you on the instruments, the charts, the radar, all of the instrument readings you can see on your iPad. I haven't used that much, but I've played with it, and it works, but I haven't really used it very much. Down here you've got the AIS, the splitter. So basically AIS uses a VHF antenna. So what we do is we use a splitter to share the same antenna as the VHF radio. So the two antennas come in and they split off, and basically whenever I'm not using a VHF, like broadcasting on the VHF, the AIS can use it to track what's going on. So it just shares the same antenna, so I don't have to install two antennas. What else? This is the connector, HDMI connector that I use for connecting my laptop, so we can watch movies on the TV that I showed you earlier. And also over here, this is the radio, and you've got a little auxiliary in audio. So basically, I can put audio from the computer into the radio. That's how that works. This little guy I was putting in this morning. I haven't finished installing it because I need to get a couple of connectors, but it's a noise, a signal processing noise filter for the HF radio. You probably heard that it's a little hard to hear. There's a lot of static and stuff on HF radios. So this little guy goes in line between the radio signal to the speaker and the speaker, and it filters out a lot of that background noise to make the voices much easier to hear. So when you're at sea and there's a lot of stuff going on and noise and whatever, and you've got the radio with a lot of static, it can be a little frustrating because you just can't hear very well. So that's a device that helps with that. So that's about everything there. I'll just close this up. Make sure I put the cables in so it all fits in nicely. There we go. Okay. Alright, so that's pretty much what's going on at the chart table, the Nav Station. Sorry, we'll just go outside. I don't know if it might have calmed down a little bit, but just to show you, it's really windy and cold, but just to show you a little bit what's going on out here. So each of the helm stations is identical. We've got the electronic throttle controls for the engines, and basically if you push this little button while this is in neutral, you transfer control. There's one on the other side as well, so you can see on the other helm. So you can basically just move across from one helm to the other and use the little button here to transfer control. And so I push the button, and now I've got control here, and I can essentially control the engines from either helm station, which is super useful. So over here I've got windlass, electric winch controls. This is the, take the cover off if I can. There we go. This is the autopilot control head. So basically I can stand by an auto and set it up and adjust. I think the sound on the video might sound terrible because of this wind. Let me try and get out and get shelter a little bit. So more instruments here. This one's the same as the one inside, but this one is a little bit different. This is actually a, so we just get out of the wind a little bit. I'm just worried it's going to sound terrible in the video. So yeah, this one is really useful because you can see visually very quickly what the wind direction is, the angle of the wind to the boat, and also the speed, but mostly it's for the angle. So I really like this when I'm sailing, to have a wind angle gauge, and B&G makes this nice one, so I have one of these dedicated at each helm, so I can always just see visually what my wind angle is, and it really helps with helming and trimming sails and so on. And this one here is a second chart plotter. So that's the one I was talking about a minute ago inside. So turn it on. So it's essentially exactly the same as the one inside, except it's a little bit smaller. And it's at the port helm station because normally when you operate the controls of the chart plotter, you use your right hand, so it's much easier to operate from here. So normally when I'm going to operate the... Okay, so there it is. Looks a little different because it's just set up a bit differently, but essentially the same thing. It's got all of the exactly the same capabilities as the other one, and you can kind of set it up however you want. So you might have a few different displays and things, autopilot and chart and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's also on a gimbal or a rotating thing. Here you basically can lift this up and it just rotates, so you can move it over and have it so you can kind of keep an eye on it from if you're sitting in the cockpit. You can see it while you're sailing. You don't have to be at the helm to see what's going on, or you can move across to the other helm station and also watch what's going on with that. So pretty nice. All right, so I think that's pretty much the rundown on the instruments on Wildling.